Please welcome Senior Vice President of Partnerships at The Atlantic, Molly Cox.
Hello, everyone. I am thrilled that you have joined us for the future of human connection, life, love, and loneliness in a digital world. In an era defined by constant connectivity, many of us are feeling more disconnected than ever. The ways that we relate to one another have been radically reshaped by technology, and the effects are both liberating and disorienting. This session brings together cultural thinkers, technologists, and relationship experts for a conversation on how digital life is transforming intimacy, identity, community, and belonging. Before we get started, I want to thank our underwriter, Scout Motors, for their support of The Atlantic's journalism. Please silence your cell phones, but don't put them away. Please share using the hashtag TAF25. We hope you enjoy the session. Thanks again.
Here to discuss the new gathering gap when social media replaces social life. Please welcome Atlantic staff writer Ellen Cushing, co-founder and CEO of Partiful, Shreya Murthy, co-founder and CTO of Partiful, Joy Tao, with Bhumika Tharoor, managing editor at The Atlantic.
Thank you for joining us. Before we start, I'd just like to announce that we'll have a period of question and answers at the end of this session. So you'll see a QR code, so you can scan that to submit your questions, and we'll get to that at the end. Thank you for joining me for our party right now. This is what this is going to be. I'm so excited to talk more about this. And Ellen, you recently wrote about a declaration, I think, saying Americans need to party more. Tell me more about that. What prompted that story, and why do we all need to party more?
Americans need to party more. I'm going to say it one more time because it's so important. I had felt kind of in my head and in my social life that there were fewer parties, and I couldn't tell if I was just getting old. But then I looked at the data, and the government collects very, very detailed data about what people do with their time. It's called the American Time Use Survey. It's so fun. Please go home and look at it after you have your party. And I found that, the number of people attending or hosting parties has basically plummeted. Now, on any given weekend, it's about 4% of people, so like 1 in 25 Americans are hosting or attending parties on a weekend. And this is a really big drop. This is a drop that has been basically happening consistently for the past several decades, so it's not just a COVID thing. And the drop is even more extreme among young people. So between 2003 and 2023, the percentage of the share of young people, I think it's 15 to 24, reporting going to parties or hosting parties dropped 70%. So I found this really surprising, and I feel like the obvious solution to people not having enough parties is that people don't host them. So that's sort of where this came from. I think that we sort of expect our social life to come to us, and we need to be like stewards of the social world we want to create. And so that's sort of where the idea came from.
That's fascinating. And Shreya, this sounds like something you and Joy have also thought about. And you've created this app called Partiful. And the point of this app is to help people gather.
Party.
And party. But I'm curious, does that mean party in the sense that where one might imagine like on a fraternity? Or does that also include book clubs and other gatherings? What's the vision?
The vision is everything. Every social interaction we think belongs on Partiful. And when we built it, what we were really envisioning was to take all the things that we do think are great about technology, how easy it can make our lives, and apply that to a space that can feel really daunting. It can feel really logistically difficult. It can feel really stressful. It's hard to coordinate groups of people for whatever you're trying to plan, whether that's a birthday party, whether it's a giant rowdy pregame, or whether you're just trying to align schedules for a 4-person book club. And so those types of logistical problems are ones that technology is actually really good at solving. And so when Joy and I started building Partiful, we looked at how can we collapse all of the complexity involved in doing what Ellen is trying to get all of us to do, so that you can, the same way you can open your phone and just tap a few buttons and 30 minutes later there's magically hot food at your front door. We want that to also be true of your social life.
And okay, so aside from maybe inviting David Letterman to your parties, which sounds like he's a
David,
hit.
call me.
How, from a design perspective, how are you thinking about, and Joy, maybe this is something you can speak to, but how do you think about the togetherness of it, where it doesn't feel as transactional as shooting a text saying, come over at this time? Like, what's the difference?
One thing we set out to do when we were building Partiful is that we wanted to make the process of planning a party feel as fun as having the party, and especially as a host and as like a recipient of invites, as a guest, we want you to feel the excitement of the party before it happens, because right now there's so many different things competing for our attention, right? So many shiny, flashy things, and we wanted to have like an invite experience that really previewed like how fun it would be to gather with your friends in this way. Maybe it's a potluck, maybe it's a book club, and so that's why we give all these options for customizing your event, and we have like really zany features like emoji reacts and custom effects and stuff. So I think it's like we have so many shiny things pulling at our attention. How can we bring it so that technology actually helps you want to gather in person?
And are you seeing that the people who are gathering using Partiful are people who, perhaps a smaller percentage of people who are predisposed to wanting to party, or are you noticing that it's able to attract people who maybe would prefer to hang out inside in their own company?
That was actually the thing that surprised me the most when we built Partiful. It's always dangerous when you're building a new product to assume that you're going to change human behavior. It's a very, very difficult thing to change. The best you can hope for is to unlock the thing that someone's already really trying to do. So when we started building Partiful, we first saw a lot of usage with that, the social planner of your life, the person who is already out there, already trying to plan parties, and we definitely made their lives 10 times easier. But I think the thing that I wasn't expecting, which was really cool for us to see, both in the feedback that we get as well as our data, is people telling us, Partiful makes me want to party more. Mm-hmm. Partiful made it feel less intimidating to ask my friends to hang out. I have a richer social life because of Partiful, because it's now so easy, because it's so much less stressful. And so I do think that when you build a tool in the right way, you can encourage more of that behavior. And that's something that we see more and more, is that as people start using Partiful, their usage actually increases over time the longer that they use it, because it becomes more of a habit. And that's really what you want if what you're trying to do is contribute to a positive social fabric. You want socializing to be a habit just as much as going to the gym is a habit.
Almost a muscle.
Exactly.
That you have to build. Ellen, in your research, you were talking about this just now as well, but for your story, the statistics around the numbers are trending downwards. People seem less interested in gathering, and you said it seems particularly acute around teens and younger people. Did you notice anything? I'm curious also about the other side of the spectrum, older people, and what does that look like? I'm thinking like 60s, 70s. We associate party culture with younger people, so it might feel more surprising that they're not gathering as we would have thought. But the loneliness epidemic that we've heard about kind of spans across.
Right, and I mean, though we do associate partying with young people, we shouldn't, right? Because older people need friends, and older people like to socialize. You know, think of the bridge club, think about mahjong groups, think about book clubs. There are ways that you can gather with people. I would call all of those a party. You don't need to be doing a keg stand to have a party. Though, you know, do a keg stand at your next bridge club.
Yeah.
So, you know, I do think that partying is for everyone. The numbers suggest that partying is going down among basically every cohort. It is going down the most among teens for various reasons, I think, but it's going down for everyone.
I'm thinking about the future, the perhaps very near future, because we've already started seeing people developing these parasocial relationships with AI and different chatbots, which to me suggests less of an impetus to go out and gather. Shreya, especially you guys are in the tech space, how are you thinking about AI, and could it be wielded in a way that helps your business, or are you thinking about this creating more barriers for people to go out?
It's a technology that I think you have to be really careful with. And so what we've seen in cases where technologists are not careful are these really dangerous patterns start to emerge, like parasocial relationships with AIs. And what makes that really challenging is now you're interacting with something that is designed to not challenge you. And in-person relationships are supposed to actually have a little friction. Like, that's how we build bonds, is we're so different from each other, and we use in-person socializing as a way of navigating those differences and bridging them. And so where we think AI can actually help with this problem is when it's not trying to replace the relationship aspect of socializing, but where it's trying to facilitate all of the logistics that are really annoying. So if you've ever had plans stall out because you and your friends can't agree on which restaurant you want to go to, like, I think that would be a great problem for an AI agent to solve, to just keep throwing out restaurant reservations that are open, highly rated for everyone's taste. Like, someone from the group says, whatever, you know, they really want Lebanese food. Someone else says they want Chinese. Like, just have someone else deal with that. And so where it can be more of an input into wrangling these problems that are more logistical, like, great. We are excited to leverage the technology in that way. But where we draw a line is Partiful is about connecting with human beings, and we don't ever want anything to intercept or replace that fundamental connection.
Although in my research, I saw that while the social gathering trends are going down, people are spending more time with their pets than ever.
We see a lot of pet parties.
That's right. It's dog parks are booming. Joy, I'm curious to hear, I'm still wrapping my head around the fact that the college age kids are not partying as they used to, but your app specifically is built for Gen Z. It's built for a younger demographic. What is happening on campuses? Are people just very studious? Is there something that's replacing it? Are they just going into their dorms? And how do you all think about, like, Partiful and college life?
Yeah, we've definitely seen this trend of the time that we spend in real life is being replaced by time spent online, being entertained by the plethora of options at your fingertips. And so that's one part of why there's this downward trend of partying. We strongly believe that, like, if you have the option to party, you should be partying. Like, if once you've experienced the partying, that cannot compare to scrolling your YouTube or scrolling TikTok, right? I think what we really need to do is let people see how easy it is actually to gather with your friends, and just like, it can be casual, like Ellen said, it doesn't have to be like a huge production, and how good that feels. And I think something else that Shreya was alluding to is like, how do we make technology actually support that rather than like replace it? Which is like, okay, once you've partied with these people, now when you're group chatting with them, now that's so much more meaningful. You have like inside jokes to talk about, you have like memories to reflect on. So we really believe that like, if we can have the chances for people to gather in person and then later follow up, maybe through online or through apps, that's going to make everyone's relationship stronger and more meaningful.
I guess it also though requires people to go to parties and then be off of their phones versus going to parties and still awkwardly
Yes,
doing it.
that's the touch point that makes it like, when you chat with somebody, if you chat with someone online who's just like a username, that's like kind of meaningless, and that's why we have so much vitriol online, right? But if you chat with someone that you actually met in real life and maybe they disagree with you, you're not going to, call them really nasty names and stuff because you met them in person.
Yeah. Ellen, you have a very clear prescription of what people need to do. What's the formula to help solve the party crisis, lack of party crisis?
Throw more parties.
And how many are we talking about?
I said 2 a year.
Okay, can you talk in tell me about the number 2.
When I wrote this story, I was just kind of spitballing what felt right to me. 2 feels like totally manageable, and I'm defining party as 10 people or more. So it can be, having a bunch of your pals over to watch the Super Bowl. It can certainly be a giant raging house party.
Or a stadium of all of us sitting here.
This is a party right now.
This is a big, yeah.
So I guess Bhumi has already checked one off her list for
this
the
is
year.
for half of my party obligations.
So, 2 feels manageable. If you kind of do the math on that, that means that like if everyone's having 2 parties a year, we all get to attend more, if you have 50 friends and everyone's having 2 parties a year, your calendar is stuffed. So 2 felt right. If you want to go higher, by all means, but everyone needs to walk out of this room and start planning their 2 parties for the rest of the year. You have 4 more months, so I think you can do it. And invite us.
Yeah, actually, that sounds fun. Shreya, I'm curious, since you probably can see how what kind of events they're throwing and who's throwing them and what that looks like, are you seeing any trends over the time, the types of, are they gigantic events? Are you seeing more smaller, intimate events? What's going on?
So on Partiful, the average party size is 15 to 20 people. So it's not huge. And what we see is you'll have this small percentage of events which are just 50 people, 100 people. Like we've had 1,000-person parties on Partiful. But the trend that we see in our data is as people use Partiful more and more, their party size gets smaller and their party rate gets higher. So they're seeing people more frequently, even if that's not necessarily in a large group. And we think that's a great thing. It's more about the habit of socializing than it is. Size doesn't matter, is what I'm saying. And so what we notice is that once you get in the habit of it, it's so much easier to just like create a Partiful for 3 people because we're getting dinner, create a Partiful for 2 people to debrief about the latest TV show that you're watching. And so it doesn't have to be this huge, expensive, logistically complex thing. It can just be the act of reaching out to people in your life and saying, I want to hang out with you, let's hang out. Boom, here are all the details, like date, time, location, like the whole thing's figured out. All you have to do is show up. And so that is, I think, the most interesting trend that we see, that once you once you take that first step and you break the seal, all of a sudden it's just so much easier to make that a part of your life.
And we were talking about parties, but Joy, I'm curious about the extension of this, which is community. I've been looking into, Robert Putnam's obviously he's the expert on this, and what happens when society's infrastructure around gathering collapses and fragments, and how sticky are the events that you guys are thinking about? Meaning, like, are you seeing the parameters of communities being built or expanded? Are people maybe doing more parties, but within the same groups of people? Is there cross-pollination happening? And yeah, what does that look like?
Absolutely. We built our product to encourage that kind of cross-pollination. So on Partiful, you can invite anyone to a party that you've previously attended party with. We call these people your mutuals. And it kind of is like you've already had an in-person, like theoretically had an in-person interaction with them. So you guys already have a touch point, and when you see other opportunities to go to parties, you can include those people. And we've definitely seen we've seen like the network spread even with our own friend groups. Like one friend invites, this friend group A, but then like one person from friend group B, suddenly that person from friend group B is like now a part of friend group A's like events now. And so we've definitely seen that happen again and again on the platform. And on your point on like different, more interest-based groups, that's also happening. And it's really cool. Like people have really like book clubs are one thing, run clubs are another really popular thing where people, like one person's in a run club and then they meet someone at a party and they're like, oh, are you interested in running? And then they introduce them to their run club.
They're going
and
to
it's
parties
like,
to run.
and it's super easy, right? Well, it's really to flirt, but like, let's be honest, everyone's there to find significant others. But so we just make it really, we try to make it really easy to access those like weaker ties. Like, of course, your close friend group, you know their numbers, you have their group chat, you can access them anytime. But then like the person that you had a really good conversation, like I'm sure many people met really cool people today, and you would love to perhaps invite them to a future event, or maybe when you're back in town, hang out together. So we want to enable those type of things, and those are absolutely things we see happening on the platform.
Yeah. Ellen, do you see reasons to feel optimistic? We've talked a lot about like the stats are going down, but is there a rosy side to what's been happening?
Yeah, I do see reasons to be optimistic. First of all, I've gotten a lot of emails in the last 9 months from people having parties, so that's good.
They are inviting you to?
I have been invited to a lot of parties all over the world, actually. Haven't made it to any of them, but I do appreciate the invite. I think people are starting to realize that their relationships with their phones have changed their social lives. I think we all know this, and we've been talking about it for a long time, but I do get the sense from talking to people about this story that people are starting to understand that we have a lot of control here, like we get to decide what kind of world we want to live in. And that applies to all things, but it includes parties. And I like to compare parties to fire trucks because fire trucks are something that enrich our lives and are an important part of our infrastructure. And you don't really think about fire trucks. You don't really think about where they come from. We kind of just expect parties to come to us. And the reason we have fire trucks is that we pay taxes. So that's how I think about parties and social life. It's like you do need to invest in your own social life. You need to invest in your community. You need to have the kinds of interactions you want to have. And I think people, certainly not everyone, but a lot of people do seem really interested in doing that. And I am really excited about technology like Partiful that facilitates all this.
Right, and what you're talking about helps break the inertia of just people who for so long are just used to not partying. Shreya, we talked about the thing that seems so difficult these days is using tech to change behaviors. But that's what you all are doing. We talked about AI, but I'm curious, like, what challenges are you preparing for the future aside from AI?
I think the biggest challenge for us is that every single day, the algorithm gets more powerful, right? It's looking like TikTok might not be banned after all. And so we have such easy access to these highly addictive algorithms that have been fine-tuned with trillions of data points by the most sophisticated engineering teams in the world to keep us glued to our screen. And I'm no different from anyone else. Like the same thing happens to me. I'll be like scrolling and be like, why am I on this? This isn't even good. Like, what am I reading? But I just can't look away. And so it's tough to break that cycle, and it is an addiction that we all have that isn't talked about in the same way substance addiction is talked about. And so I think the worry for me is that if we don't have things like regulations, parental controls, conversations like this, where we're actively deciding to do things about it and actively controlling our screen time, it will get out of our control. And so the way that we think about this in a Partiful context is we're not trying to be another thing that captures your attention and keeps you on our app. We want you to come and get the information you need and then put your phone away. And so we have to, but we have to grab enough of your attention that you remember to socialize, you remember to plan that party. And so while you're getting, tons of notifications that, someone commented on your photo, but turns out it's a bot, we have to very thoughtfully be like, hey, by the way, your birthday's coming up in a month, and here's a draft Partiful ready to go if you want to plan it, or Halloween's coming up, or it's football season, maybe you should tailgate. And so we think a lot about how we can thoughtfully intervene to try to break that algorithm addiction, but we're just one app competing against these, gigantic corporations that are very sophisticated at doing this. And so I think it's going to take more than just us.
Just one quick question, and I don't know if we have time for larger audience questions, but in the meantime, are you all able to create the counter algorithm through Partiful?
Our whole thing is we don't want to create the algorithms. One thing we have done is, one problem that we noticed is, well, what do you do if, sometimes you're just exhausted, right? Sometimes, plan the 2 parties a year, but what are you doing the other, 50 weeks? And maybe your friend's not hosting something, and that's out of your control. And so what we recently launched in New York, and it's soon to come to other cities, is this feed, this tab on our app where you can discover events to go to. And many of those events are hosted by people in your extended network, people that you've partied with before. And they're really high quality events. They're everything from pop-ups to cultural events to free concerts to album releases to things like run clubs. And so what we're trying to do is say, we know that there's so much engaging online content that is so easy for you to access, but what we want to show you is that there's actually so much engaging offline content for you as well. And here, we've curated it for you, and hopefully you find something here that you want to go to, because you can spend your weekend touching grass instead of bed rotting and doom scrolling.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm sorry we didn't have time to get to audience questions, but if you have questions you'd like to ask, you should invite all of these people to your parties and ask them there. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Still to come on the Future of Human Connection stage, the CEO of Match Group, Spencer Rascoff. for a conversation produced by our underwriter, Scout Motors, about revitalizing an American icon to drive community and connection. Please welcome President and CEO of Scout Motors, Scott Keogh, with the Atlantic's CEO, Nicholas Thompson.
All right. Scott, it is lovely to see you here. I hope everybody saw his car out front. It looks very cool.
I hope so too, absolutely.
So you're doing this very simple thing, which is starting a new car company. It's not a very capital intensive thing. It's something that a lot of people have succeeded in recently. Let me ask you a question.
New York sarcasm is reigning in, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
welcome. You work in South Carolina, you come to New York, we come at you with a little bit of this. Here's a question for you. You have this hypothesis, which is pretty interesting, which is that cars should be very modern, right? You should have electric cars, you should have all kinds of new stuff, but they should feel classic, right? That people want something tactile. Yeah. And that it's actually a reaction against the age we're in. Will you explain that?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. And I think what we just listened to confirms that. Look, I think to start a great company, in our minds, you need three things. Obviously, you need a business reason. Of course, you need a real market need and a little bit of serendipity or magic.
And $600 million, right?
And a little more than that,
okay.
But a little more than that, a few $billion. A
few billion.
I think the business need is clear. I think the U.S. car market has a couple of profit pools. There's two segments where all the money is made, and you have to be there to be successful. The second one is what we've noticed without a doubt is this absolute connection and disorientation amongst the American consumer and amongst automotive. There was sort of two promises in our segment. Promise number one was put all technology at all times in the car. It's going to be great. And it led to 3 screens of televisions inside cars, layers and layers of software, layers and layers of AI. And instead of being connection machines, they were these disconnection machines, without a doubt. I think the other thing that the industry promoted was this sort of bravado of go dominate, right? If you have an off-road car, it's like dominate nature, dominate the terrain, take over the universe, take over the world. And I think all of these things just caused unease and disconnection. And then the third piece, which was the magic, is the company Volkswagen Group acquired a truck company called Navistar. Under the IP of this truck company, Navistar was a magical, iconic brand called Scout. It invented the SUV, and we're now revitalizing. So a piece of magic, a business reason, and this real need to connect. And that's what our designers and engineers have brought to life in this car.
Wait, so you feel like all those ads about dominate nature, we will go out, we will crush it, we will take you to the top of the biggest iceberg. You feel like that has alienated people from their cars?
I think it's alienated them from other people. I think it's alienated.
I drove a Honda Odyssey, so we're not really
that's maybe not the right target group for that thing. And then I think if you look at the technology, 100% it has done that. We did something as simple and basic as put real switches back into the car, and it's like, absolutely, I want to connect with something.
Right, so do I roll down the window like this?
Oh, we're almost there, but not quite on that front.
Wait, tell me exactly the old school stuff you put in this car.
I think first and foremost is a bench seat in the front. So I know there's lots of dating apps, but I think nothing's going to beat a bench seat in the front of the car. And I think this is real connection beyond the whole thing.
But that's like for a threesome.
You said it, not me. It could also be your dog. It could be your son. It could be your.
Great. Sorry. Keep going.
So that's the first one. I think the second one is all of the physical switches. You don't have to go 3 levels down of software to turn on a heated seat and do those types of things. I think the third one is a tailgate like the original Scout had in the back. There would have been a much easier way to execute this, but we wanted to create sort of a Scout moment, and you can sit and do a tailgate in the back. We have a cabana roof that's sort of an ode to sort of 1950s design, big giant fabric roof that you can open and get the outdoors. And we did almost everything possible to build what we called a connection machine. And the reason we wanted to build a connection machine is we think automotive was starting to build disconnection machines.
Yep.
AI, it'll drive itself, don't touch anything, don't engage with the car. And this narrative, by the way, is proven true because we see the reaction that we're getting to the vehicle and this powerful
You can even
idea.
choose your music in the Uber, so you don't have to talk to the Uber driver. You also have this kind of amazing combination where it is an electric vehicle, but it also can be powered by gas, but it's not a hybrid. Explain that, because that's my favorite thing about these cars.
It is my favorite thing as well. Look, I think we all see the narrative in America, which I think is a little bit nonsense, that EV is somehow evil, or I love EV. ICE is great. Let's go internal combustion engine. Let's go back to the 50s, and it's going to be fantastic.
No, America has come together, and everybody
50s.
hates Tesla now. Like, that is the one thing that unites.
No comment on that front.
Okay, sorry, continue.
So I think if you look at the technology, and we're the only ones with it, it's a powerful solution. So what did Americans say? EVs are cool. 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. They're super quiet. I can charge them at home. However, I have this anxiety, a range anxiety, which is real. So we came up with a smart engineering solution where basically you can get 150 miles of EV range. With the gas extender, you can get 500 miles of total range. And to me, it solves the problem. It's got the benefits of EV with an engine that gives you the range. How it works?
But it's not a gas combustion engine driving the car and powering the drivetrain.
Driving the car and driving is the battery.
Right.
The engine is used to charge the battery.
Right. So why can you only get an extra 350 miles on the battery from filling it with gas?
Because the gas is used to charge the battery.
Right, but can't you make a bigger tank and get like 1,000?
Theoretically, you could go infinite, but we do want to have a car of certain size and certain proportions.
So the value of this is that you get all the good things of electric. And if you're just driving around town, you can always use electric. But if you're driving, 8 hours to go see your mom, as happens with me, you don't have to stop and charge all the time.
Exactly. And again, the overwhelming majority of Americans drive under 45, 60 miles a day. So an electric car is perfect for that. But when you have to go longer distances, you have a solution, and it's super
and you can just
efficient.
stop at a gas station.
Yeah. The other super slick thing about the engine, since it's only being dialed in to do one thing, charge the battery, you can be very efficient with the engine. You don't have to cover massive RPM ranges. You can cover isolated RPM ranges, so you can really dial it in.
And your goal is not just to make an electric car that will sell really well in Vermont. You want to reach the entire country, right?
100%.
What is the ratio of cars or pre-orders that you've had in California versus pre-orders in Texas?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at a historical, let's say, normal EV company, 60% of your business would be California, and the rest would sort of be America. If I look at us, we're roughly 25, 26% California. I think we're 17, 18% in Texas.
Oh, wow.
So we have definitely built an American 50-state car, which, by the way, is not easy. If you look at most automotive companies, they're either heartland companies, they do well there, or they're coastal companies. And I think with our brand and what we're doing in America, we have an opportunity to be a 50-stater.
You actually have a new way of doing an engine, and you think you have a new way of doing a brand where you've got...
We don't think. We definitely have a new way of doing an engine, and we definitely have a new way of doing a brand. So it's not my thinking. It's real.
Okay, explain, but explain, right, you're running counter to, trucks and SUVs that go and dominate the wilderness. You do have an electric motor in there. How are you selling this in red America where people have to make long drives? What is the advantage of this over a Ford F-150?
Yeah, the advantage of this over a Ford F-150 is, one, the E-range. Two, the power is immense because you got the power of that battery. So you get the range and you get more power than the F-150 that you just referenced. So that's the exact solution America's been looking for. It's got V8 power with great range, plus it's an EV on top.
All right, so you want to make a universal American brand. You've got this very cool engineering. You've got this old classic stuff. You need to build these cars. When are we going to be able to buy them? Can we drive out with that one on the bottom?
Not exactly. Okay. Not exactly.
So when do these cars go on the market?
2027, end of 2027. Of course, we're building a factory in Blythewood, South Carolina, as we speak. The other thing, by the way, getting to connection, I think not only does this manifest itself with the consumer, it's at the factory as well. And you have to look at why in America do we have 20 to 30% absenteeism in factories in America. And what we have is a lot of people say, oh, it's going to be great. We should build things again in America. Let's build things again in America. Usually spoken by people who have never worked in a factory. So we are going to make massive efforts. And the reason it happened is a lack of respect on the factory floor. I think not enough people knows what it takes to work in a factory, 8, 10 hours a day, work on Sundays, work 24 hours on that front. And that's another dynamic that we are going to work hard for. That's why our site is not going to be just a factory site. We're going to have medical there. We're going to have childcare there, healthcare there on the site, interacting with the community. So yes, it's a little 1950s-ish, but I think that's exactly what's needed to make a factory work.
What percent of the assembly line will be roboticized?
Yeah, it's not. We relatively are going to have lean on the robots. The reason we want to do that is it makes you relatively fixed. If you have to alter anything, if you have robots, dramatic ripping up the plant. So it's not great. So we believe we want a lot more hands-on on the plant. It gives us flexibility. It gives us adaptability. Plus, it's a great labor opportunity. And I think if you look at Blythewood, South Carolina, and the labor opportunities there, We're going to be training. We're going to be paying substantially more than what's in the market. You're going to have real benefits. And so...
So I read about your search for a factory, right? And you have to find a place where there's power, and you have to find a place where there's water, and you have to find a place where there's a good labor force, and you find that you want to find a place that's kind of flat too, right?
Yeah, not easy.
And so you go down to Blythewood, and you find the perfect spot, but there's a big house in it, a big red house, and so you bulldoze that, right?
Not at all. That's not a good way to connection our community. No, thanks for bringing that up. I think there's a kind of one of the founding things of this company.
Oh, there it is.
And there it is. And we arrived there. Of course, it's a 1,600-acre site. This doesn't give you a great feel for it, but that's the original family. This was their home. They sold the land generations ago. And yeah, most companies would have bulldozed it. We made that our first headquarters, and it's still there. So it was a real grounding element to say we're building a real car for real Americans that live in homes like that. And it's there. And yeah, every time I go to the plant, that's where we hold our meetings and that's where we do things. And what was very touching is the son and the mother came to our groundbreaking, and they were almost in tears when they were seeing what's coming of their former site. So it was a powerful moment. And I think, yeah, they sound trite, but for us, they're important. And to that community in Blythewood, to you sitting in New York City, that's just a tiny red house, the community in Blythewood, that was an important symbol of the type of company we are. So it was critical for us.
I like that a lot. Yeah, well, we want to be a 50-state brand. You want to be a 50-state brand. It's great to have you here. Thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That was great.
Cheers. Thank you very much. Thank you. Great.
Here to discuss scaling connection, modern love, in the age of the algorithm. Please welcome the CEO of Match Group, Spencer Rascoff, with Annie Lowrey, staff writer at The Atlantic.
Thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to talk about modern love with Spencer. And I wanted to start off with a big question, and maybe it's just a reflection of my friends and the people I know, and maybe none of them are deserving of love, but why is it that everybody's having such a hard time out there?
It's a complicated world, and dating is hard. It's always been hard. Finding love has always been hard. We try every day at Match Group to make it a little bit easier, but I don't think your friends are alone in reflecting what is a really hard thing to do.
Yeah, so maybe let's talk a little bit about ways it might have gotten harder. How much did the pandemic change the group of businesses, the sites that you're working with? I know, again, just among the people that I know, and here we have our group of Tinder super users in the crowd here assembled for this. But how much did the pandemic screw this up?
Well, the pandemic created a loneliness epidemic, or I guess it exacerbated a loneliness epidemic that already exists. So. About 75% of Americans say there is a loneliness epidemic, and I agree. Mm-hmm. The pandemic also hurt people's ability to interact and to form human connection. A lot of people, arguably a whole generation, didn't acquire that skill. They missed their high school graduation, they missed their high school prom, they missed their first year or two of college. And those are important life skills and mistakes that you make when you're interacting and flirting and meeting with people, which they now need to sort of learn or relearn a little bit later in life than prior generations did. So undoubtedly the pandemic has impacted how people connect.
And how did you see that happening? Because you, of course, work in an unusual set of businesses that are, in some sense, perhaps trying to keep people on the app, but are really trying to modify what happens when people hopefully are not looking at their phones, when they have their phones off.
Well, we definitely want people off of our apps. Let me correct any confusion about that. My brother and sister are both 32. They both just moved in with their significant others, my brother in Washington, D.C., my sister here in Brooklyn, with people they met on Hinge. The $40 a month that they and their partner were each paying, we are happy to give that up in exchange for the word of mouth that they've generated, because they've told hundreds of friends, how did you meet your person? And their answer is always Hinge. So we love that churn. We welcome that churn. We try to drive user outcomes. And there's a reason that the Hinge tagline is designed to be deleted. And Tinder is a little bit of a different use case. Tinder is trying to offer a world of possibilities. It could mean a soulmate. It could mean a short-term relationship. It could just mean a fun night out. But in both cases, we try to drive user outcomes, even if that means that people leave our apps once they achieve those outcomes.
Yeah, and can you talk to me a little bit about online dating now versus online dating 20 years ago when we were first getting on the internet, when it seemed to me that, the promise back then was that you could meet a very specific person on this place where, before it was, you might be going to, as you point out, right, like, a school social, or you might be going to your local bar, but then all of a sudden you had the entire world, right? Is that sort of still what we're dealing with now, or what has changed?
Well, the scale has changed radically. So today, half of all relationships start on a dating app in the US. So
amazing.
20 years ago, there was stigma. I mean, I remember when you were sort of embarrassed to tell someone that you met online, or used a dating app. That was really considered sort of an act of desperation. Now it's considered just the norm. So that's been a huge change. The products have gotten much better. Obviously now they're mobile, so they used to be on desktop. So now you see people using our apps in line at Starbucks or in all sorts of different places. And the products have gotten so much better, and the algorithms have gotten better, the recommendations have gotten better. The problem has become more important also, as I say. I think it used to sort of be a novelty, online dating, and now it's something existential for society. I truly believe that. I truly believe that if we don't cure loneliness as a society, we got big problems.
Mm-hmm. And so can you tell me a little bit about algorithmically how it is that, right, it seems that you probably have a given person and there might be some sort of statistical likelihood that they'll like another person just because they have affinity, they have matching. But what can the algorithm do? Sometimes I feel like it can be almost even a little bit spooky who's getting delivered to people. These characteristics that you might not even know that you're looking for.
Well, that is one thing I'm proud of about our apps, which is that they do a great job of introducing people that would not ordinarily meet in real life.
Right.
That's one of the big societal benefits. There's actually a lot of data that there's significantly more interracial marriage, for example, in the era of online dating than there was prior to the rise of dating apps, because people are now meeting each other and falling in love with each other that they might not ordinarily have met in the pre-dating app world. So that's something to be proud of. I guess I've only been CEO of Match Group for 7 months, and I would say that I have been surprised by how much more potential there is in these algorithms. That even though this category is 20 plus years old, and even though some of our apps have been doing it best in class for a very long time, there's still so much more work to be done. For example, Tinder is testing a whole new product offering in Australia and New Zealand, which instead of the traditional Tinder, where you're looking at a photo and swiping right if you're interested, swiping left if you're not, instead, you're answering a series of questions and being given just one single person at a time and being shown what common interests you have with that person. So it's a much more sort of thoughtful experience where you're receiving a bespoke pair, almost like a traditional matchmaker might give you, as compared with sort of the fast twitch experience of traditional Tinder. So that's a new recommendation algorithm. It's a new product. We've just launched it in our second country in Australia, and I just use that as an example to show that here's a company that's more than 15 years old, and yet there's still a lot more innovation to be had.
Talk to me about the desire for some artificial constraint, or just some constraint on the part of your users. Because I think that this idea that, there's how many millions of people within a 45-minute drive, and there's got to be one of them or a couple of them for whom it's promising. But it's really, really difficult, I think, if you are going to a site like this or an app like this, and you're feeling like, you got to swipe through 10,000 people to find the one. That has to feel really tough.
It is, and that can feel exhausting. That burnout that some users feel is something that our research shows and something that we try to improve every day. That's one of the reasons that Tinder is testing this other user experience, which is quite different than the traditional Tinder experience. But we at Match Group, we have 25 different apps.
Yeah.
So we've got Plenty of Fish and OkCupid and Match, Tinder, Hinge. For example, The League, which is probably the app for you. I know you're married, but if you were single,
take this off right here.
The League is the app for highly ambitious people. And
Thank you, Spencer.
and The League, for example, gives 5 matches a day. So it is really kind of career oriented, and it says, hey, don't spend half an hour swiping on thousands of photos. Instead, here are just the 5 people, and you'll get another daily drop tomorrow at 8 p.m. and then the next day. And so we are constraining things with this other app of The League. And then we have a series of what we call affinity apps, which are demographically based. So Chispa for Hispanics, BLK for Black users, Archer for gay men, Her for gay women, et cetera. And so that's another way that we constrain, which is by demographics.
Yeah, and does that make the experience of actually, what does it do to the user, right? Like, how does the user feel different? If, again, they're probably on an app, A, for convenience sake, but B, also just because they know the people that they know, right?
Yeah, well, we find that there's a lot of multi-app usage in this category. And that's one of the reasons that Match Group is a portfolio company with many brands. And so people will use Tinder and Archer, or they'll use The League and Hinge, or they'll use Tinder and BLK, et cetera. And we have a number of shared technologies behind the scenes that power these multiple apps, and we have some shared services which make it much more efficient and effective. But the pool of people in each of the apps are separate and distinct. And that allows the user to sort of fish in multiple ponds and encourages them to use multiple apps, which is a pretty common behavior.
Yeah, and it is amazing to me how deeply embedded these apps are now in the culture. Like, one of the single most interesting conversations that I've had with anybody recently was I was talking to another journalist who doesn't write for The Atlantic, but she's a friend and she just got out of college. And she was telling me that at where she went to school, people didn't meet each other at parties. They didn't go up to each other after class. They were all just on an app, and that was how they met each other. And I was like, but everybody's right there. You can see them. You can go say hi. And she was like, no, this is not what people did, which blew my mind. But then again,
You can also hail a taxi in the street, or you can summon an Uber or a Lyft, right?
I know, exactly.
So think about how society
can get you
has
anywhere
changed.
You want to go.
We are an on-demand economy. We use Uber and Lyft for transportation. We use Expedia to book travel. We use Zillow to shop for homes. We use Grubhub or Seamless to order food. I mean, it's open an app and on-demand bliss awaits.
Yeah, and so I want to talk also about how using these apps has changed the experience of actually dating for some users, right? I certainly feel like, especially perhaps among young people, there's this feeling that you're kind of disposable, that people cancel, that they ghost, that they don't show up, that you are perhaps 1 out of 25 people that they're talking to at any given time. And it's not necessarily facilitating connection because it's changed the cultural way that people date, right?
Well, I mean, perhaps. I guess I look at it a little differently. I think when you walk into a date from somebody that you met online, you have kind of a running start. You already have some chemistry, you have some shared interest, you both sort of opted into that interaction. You've probably also chatted. I mean, we have a lot of research that we do internally, and we use a lot of AI to basically read the sentiment inside of chats between people, and then that generates an IRL and in real life meetup. I guess I feel like those relationships are off to a better start than a pure cold introduction or just meeting someone in a bar. And we've actually done some research on that as well, and there's some third parties. I think there's a Stanford study about marital happiness and marriage longevity from being higher from people that met online than people that met just organically in the real world, and because presumably you have shared interests and then have had some shared digital communication before you meet in person.
So you brought up AI, which is something that I want to ask about, which is that are you seeing the use of ChatGPT and similar technologies changing the way that people present online, filtering through? Is it changing how people can actually use the apps when they're setting themselves up? Even in their photos, right? I feel like everybody is very polished, perhaps, now.
Well, I mean, we have a lot of AI functionality in our products.
Yeah.
So for example, when you create a profile on Tinder or Hinge, it connects to your camera roll and it pulls out photos that we suggest you should choose in your profile. When you're connecting and you're chatting with somebody, if the conversation sort of stalls, as frequently conversations do in chat, we use AI to suggest topics that might be of mutual interest to you and the person that you're chatting with. We don't write the copy for you. We think that's a step too far, a little dystopian, but we make suggestions about topics that might be of interest to you. So, AI is infused into our products. We know a lot of users also use an LLM, like a ChatGPT or other service, to compose responses inside of chat. I've moderated a lot of Gen Z focus groups myself, where I've sat down with college students and talked to them about how they use our apps, and that comes back to us frequently. We think the right way to approach it in terms of how we're integrating AI is, as I say, to sort of suggest topics rather than do the work for them. We don't want to create a world where my AI is talking to your AI. We don't think that drives human connection, but we do want to use AI to facilitate connection, not to get in between to the two humans, but to help push the two humans together.
Yeah. I feel like 5 years from now, we'll be here talking, the two of us, and it'll actually just be our respective boss, perhaps, chatting with one another. And I'm wondering, though, if you do feel like there's a risk of it flattening the experience. Does it make people seek out something different, more unexpected? I know when I'm reading AI written text now, right? It just has this sort of like plasticine quality, right? It's tough, yeah. Maybe it sounds more professional. I know that this is a big issue with people in resumes and job applications, right?
It definitely is in job applications, right? Everyone kind of looks the same because everyone's resume or LinkedIn profile is now written by AI, and then companies are using AI to assess them, and so it's like, your AI versus my AI, and it's just this standstill. We haven't seen that come to our category yet.
Okay.
I think we use AI as a way to help people get to the good stuff faster. So it powers a lot of our recommendation engines, which is the beating heart of any dating app, figuring out who to show me, who to show to you. And it does help you improve your profile, and it helps with conversations. But we have AI principles that have kind of drawn a line about how far we want AI to come into the product, and where we want it to help and where we don't want to use AI. I will say one other interesting thing, which is we've done a lot of research with Gen Z, which is 18 to 28, about how they perceive AI in the dating category, and actually just in general. And they don't want AI to be front and center in these products. They want it to sort of exist. They know it exists. They want it to be in the background. But in the same way that we would never say, oh, this feature was built with Ruby on Rails or HTML or Java or C++ or Python or some programming language, we don't think it behooves us as a brand or a series of brands to say, oh, this product is built with AI. This is AI powered. AI powered is like kind of hokey. So that's not, it's not front and center in the brand positioning, even though it's very much behind the scenes in the products.
And I want to ask about the influence of social media here, because I feel like we're in this very interesting pivot point where 10 years ago, people were really living their lives online in a way that especially young people actually kind of aren't now, right? Like they're not using Facebook. They often have private accounts, private Instagram, private TikTok accounts. Again, we've seen the rise of these algorithmic apps, especially TikTok, that are kind of post-social, right? You're not really following your friends, you're following these people who are trying to sell you kitchen gadgets and show you things about their car or whatever else it is. And I don't know if that has affected meeting people online, especially since it seems pretty common for people to refer people out, right? To say, here's my name, go look me up. Or like, this is my Instagram, you can see my photography hobby.
It's funny, we just had a board meeting today for Match Group, and we spent an hour on this topic with our Gen Z research experts from Tinder and Hinge presenting to the board on exactly this topic. So you're onto something. I would describe it this way. Young people are clearly still using social media, but their preference is now for ephemeral content, not permanent content. So the idea of posting something in feed on Instagram, for example, that's going to live there forever and define them, that's out of vogue, but posting story formats on Snapchat or Instagram is very much still normal behavior and wildly popular. And that says something about how sophisticated and savvy Gen Z is about their digital footprint and about how they present themselves in the world. And that definitely informs our product strategy. So, for example, Tinder is in the process of changing its product so that it is less about quickly assessing the attractiveness of a photo, swipe right, yes, swipe left, no, and more letting the user assess the whole person. So for example, now we have biographical content on top of the photo. Now if you swipe right on the third or fourth photo, it'll actually tell the user what photo it was that you were interested in. So if I swipe right on your photo of you skiing, now in chat, we're starting to have a conversation about you skiing rather than me just saying, oh, I swipe right on your photo. And then perhaps most importantly, Tinder's double date product is one of the most successful products that Tinder has launched in years. And double date is really finely tuned. It has great product market fit for this Gen Z user that wants a lighter weight way to connect, a lower pressure, lower stakes. Again, think like I prefer Instagram stories, which is just there for 24 hours, over Instagram in-feed, where that's going to define me for the rest of my life. Now compare with a double date where two friends get together, they're now chatting in a four-way chat inside of Tinder, and then they get together. It's not even a date, it's like a group hang. It's just, we're gonna vibe and see what happens and whether we have good chemistry with each other. It doesn't matter, either way, I'll have a good time with my friend. That has product market fit and resonance with Gen Z in a way that a one-on-one date is really high stakes, high pressure. And think back to your earlier question about COVID and the pandemic and how that changed people's ability to connect. If you missed your high school graduation, your high school prom, and your first 2 years of college, it's pretty stressful going on a first date with someone that you met online. Like, that's high stakes, that's scary. What do I wear? What do I say? Who's gonna pay? But if it's two friends getting together, it's totally different. So that's one reason that Tinder's been so successful with double date as a feature.
And have you seen other, more emphasis or more desire for these kind of in real life, more authentic, right? Like, we don't have to present ourselves online, right? Like, on these abilities to get kind of right back off. Given that, as we've been talking about, it's how do you know when you're just looking at a profile? And it is very, very different than meeting somebody in person.
Yeah, for sure. So for example, Pairs, which is our app in Japan. Yeah. Pairs is the biggest dating app in Japan. It's owned by Match Group. About 10% of all marriages in Japan come from Pairs.
That is amazing.
It's wildly popular. Yeah. Pairs has a whole section of the app, which we've just launched, which is IRL events. So they partnered with the biggest karaoke chain in Japan. I think it's 6,000 stores.
Sounds so fun.
You press the button on the app and it says, whatever city you're in Japan, it'll show how many available spots there are in each of the different karaoke rooms. They partnered with the largest speed dating, IRL speed dating company, so you can actually press this button and now book a kind of a spot at an IRL speed dating event, and a number of other local events. So Pairs is making a huge push into IRL events. It's something that our US brands are watching carefully and thinking a lot about. We have done hundreds and hundreds of events over the last couple of years across our different brands. I think it's a very important part of how young people want to connect. It's hard to scale. Operationally, it's super complex, obviously, but Pairs is doing it as a platform, which I'm pretty optimistic about.
Got it. And so I want to talk a little bit more about those folks who are 18 to 25 who had the pandemic happen, or up to 30, I guess, who had the pandemic happen at a pretty difficult moment in life. And for, especially if among young men and young women whose paths seem to be diverging in some ways in terms of interest, in terms of politics, in terms of perhaps socialization, right? Are you seeing problems on the app or interesting things come? I shouldn't call it a problem. Are you seeing interesting frictions or interesting things come out of the app from these younger users, just in terms of gender relations? Of course, noting that you're not only dealing with straight couples at all.
Yeah. Well, there is data to show that people are seeking relationships with people with similar political beliefs, and as we've seen that sort of bifurcate, where young women are tending to be more progressive, young men are tending to be more conservative, that creates a challenge for relationship building overall and for society. As I said previously, though, I do think it's important that online dating apps bring people together that they wouldn't have otherwise met. So whereas traditional social media has torn the country apart over the last couple of years, the online dating category has brought people together, and I'm proud of that. We have more work to do, but I do think of us in a different category than social media because of our ability to bring people together.
And is there a way in which, before the pandemic, dating is different now that has surprised you since you've been there in the past 7 months, or things, I guess, that have endured that have surprised you, things that haven't changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think dating is very on the nose for an 18 to 24-year-old. It's like, they're not, if you're 22, to go to the App Store and download a dating app so that you can match with someone to go on a date is very transactional and deep funnel. And this is why I think Tinder's product strategy, which is trying to create more low pressure ways for them to connect, is the right response to that. So that is a societal change. 10 years ago, the App Store was new. Remember the Apple campaign, there's an app for that. It was kind of new and novel, the idea of you could open up the phone and start looking at all these people and judge them very quickly. That had great product market fit. Today, Tinder, which tends to serve that younger audience, needs to build different lower pressure ways to connect because society has changed in the last 10 years.
So I just, before we came out here, heard that Spencer is in fact on all of his own apps, and his profile is like, I am married and I am the head of this app. I am just here for user research. But he chats with people. He'll like match and chat just to like see how people are doing,
I mean,
which
you have to use your product.
Love.
Yes.
I love so much that it's not, because I was like, oh, you must have dummy accounts, right? And he was like, I do, but also, here's me. And so, what's your advice for people when you look at their profiles? What's the really good stuff that you give to people?
Well, my wife is a good sport. My wife, who I've been with for 32 years, is a very good sport. But look, I ran Zillow for 15 years.
Yeah.
I couldn't have been a successful CEO of Zillow without using Zillow and other real estate apps. And therefore, I have to be on the product. I've had lots of fascinating chats with people, men and women, that I've met on all of our apps. It's super important to use your own product. I mean, that's what being a product-led tech executive is all about.
Yeah. Wait. What do they ask you though? I mean, what's it?
I get product feedback all the time. I get bug reports.
Okay. All right.
I screenshot and post them in our internal Slack constantly. I get a lot of success stories. I get a lot of people.
So sweet.
I think I was mentioning to you backstage, even my brother's 32, just went to a wedding in Nantucket, and the mother of the bride thanked Hinge in her mother of the bride speech because bride and groom met on Hinge. So I hear those success stories all the time from people in our apps and also just from people in general. And that's the type of thing that gets you fired up to go to work in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. I feel like I could have talked about this for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, but we so appreciate your thoughts on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.